Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Philly Blitz TV episode. You'll find this on YouTube and other platforms, but you'll also be able to listen to it on all the regulars like Spotify, Apple Music, wherever. But we're super excited to be here. I'm Parth, and I'm here with Pierre and Quell. How you guys doing today?
Chilling, man. What's going on with y'all?
Awesome, man. How you fellas doing, man? I'm sorry, you guys. I almost got away from the original. Yes, sir. Nice to be
Right,
with you guys.
almost, but it's good to be back, guys. Last week we had a good what was that one? That was the draft blitz
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
with Andrew. That was a great time.
Great
Our
time.
P's and Q's coming soon. I know it's been a while, but we're excited to get back here. Quell had a really interesting idea for a true false kind of thing, and then we also thought we could just talk some blitz. Not blitz. I'm sorry, draft blitz, and
I'm sure
and
John Banner would
also
love us
just
talking
some
some blitz.
and just talk some birds in general. But where do you guys want to start? What are you guys thinking? How about we kind of like move into the true false, but we can just kind of see where the conversation takes us from there.
Okay.
That'd be dope.
Yeah. All right. So I liked a lot of these questions, Quell. So starting with the first one, I like this one. So it's a draft true or false. Um, Trent McDuffie will not be high on the Eagles draft board because of his. What do you think? Like, obviously,
Arm
there
length.
there have been some talks about it. Arm length, exactly. So is it true that that's going to be a factor, or is it false?
Me personally, I'd have to go false because when you turn on the film and you watch him play, he just pops off the screen. I think he's probably the best tackler out of the secondary in this draft. He just plays with very high IQ, even in pass defense. Like, even though his arms are short, he always seems to break up passes. So
Yeah, I mean that can absolutely be there. I mean, quote. Do you want to say anything?
I mean, I feel like this is a hit or miss question because, as I've said numerous pods we've had, as I said last week when we spoke to Andrew, I mean, Howie Roseman has to make a decision that do you just want to draft really good football players or do you want to draft somebody that fits what your defensive coordinator wants to do? And again, as I keep saying, Howie Roseman has admitted that we have Jonathan Gannon on rent. So he's who knows how long he's going to be there. This could be his last season in Philadelphia. And I mean, yeah, Gannon has a specific preference into the taller, longer arm cornerback, 6 feet, 6'2", something of that nature, like just the taller guys. And of course, we know that that's not McDuffie's measurables. Like that's not where he stands. At the same time, as Pierre said, you're getting a really, really good football player, a really good football player, outstanding tackler. I mean, I seen tape with him. I think it was against Washington State where wide receivers were by far taller than him, and it was just at this point you would think it's height on height, but McDuffie had his. I had to go back and check. I don't know it off the top of my head what his vertical was, but it was definitely on display on that play where it was you taller, but I'm a better athlete right here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he puts a lot of that on display. Like I feel like you wouldn't go wrong selecting Trent McDuffie. My whole thing looking at it is with Devontae Maddox already in the lineup, I mean, would you be setting yourself up a little bit with the little shorter arm guys? But
That's
I
exactly.
mean, as I always, the conversation I also always have when I talk about Trent is Trent offers so much, especially even when we talk about Gannon, because Gannon spoke in volumes about wanting to play more dime. And just like Avante, Trent is very versatile in terms of where you want to play him at, how you want to use him. He can play some safety, he can play some
Mm-hmm.
corner, some nickel. Like Trent's very versatile, so kind of opens up the bag of what you can call if you're the defensive coordinator. So I'm not
Yeah,
quite sure.
I mean you just about covered everything I was going to say, Quell. I agree with you, Pierre. I mean, he jumps off the screen when you're watching film, but in fairness, I felt like Avante did a lot of times too. When you watch his college highlights, like he was all over the place, and he could make those plays. The Avante, comparison is easy. They're smaller corners. They're feisty. They got short arms, but they're able to compete because of athleticism. I mean, Trent McDuffie is a different level athlete.
Right,
I'll
got
say
a
that, but
little longer arms.
yeah, and so I'll give him that. But like you said, Quell, you already have an Avante in the lineup, right? So then the question becomes: are you willing to, play with the risks that come there, because we've seen Avante, maybe he was able to make plays in college, but when you go up against those bigger receivers who are just going to have, the arm length and the reach over you, there's not much you can do. And your athleticism, the range and the gap is closing as you get to higher levels. So that's a question. But like Quell mentioned, he's such a versatile player. And so I think if you do draft McDuffie, then you have to have a plan for him. I don't think, I don't know. Maybe I'm being arm lengthist or something, but I don't know if I'm convinced that he can play on the outside in the league just because of his arm length. Like the Avante experience, because I love Avante, and you see that we moved him from the outside back to the inside, and all of a sudden he has this career revival and this resurgence, and he looks like a completely different player. So I don't know if I see that there's a player there like an Andrew Booth or a Kyer Elam in a similar range, then maybe I would be more inclined to take them, unless you have a plan where maybe McDuffie can be inside a little bit playing that dime, or also start moving over to safety and have a transition plan there. But yeah, I think if you want McDuffie, you got to have a plan for him. I don't know if it's just a surefire plug and play. Maybe it's unfair, but that's about where I'm at. Yeah. Anything else?
See, I wouldn't necessarily say you got to quote unquote have to have a plan for him, because as we stated, he's a really good player. He can play on the outside. My whole thing is, as we mentioned, with you having to move Avante inside because of the arm length, but as we also mentioned, he has a little longer arms than Avante. You could play the risk and try to get your hands on a Jair Alexander type guy, or you could go with what history tells you, where you see that no cornerback with sub 31-inch arms has made an All-Pro since 2010. And only 3 with 31.5-inch arms in general. So history's not quite on its side, but
yeah, like you said, Quell, I don't know. I think it comes down to whether, I'm not gonna say whether or not, but the type of football players you want on your team. Like I said, you turn on a film, this guy can play. At the end of the day, that's what it's about to me.
Yeah, I think that's all absolutely fair, but the butt just keeps coming there for me. Like every time I think about him, I'm just like, the size just gets to me, because I love ball players. You know what I mean? But we have some of those guys. We have TJ Edwards, who he can play ball, but he might not have the measurables. For TJ, it's speed. He doesn't have like the same speed that you need at linebacker. For Trent, maybe in the league, it might be the arm size, but I'm not saying that he's not a good prospect, because I think he's a baller for sure. There's no question in my mind, but I don't know if he's the exact guy that we might need. I think that's the way I'm kind of looking at it.
Yeah. And it's completely understandable with the whole arm length and everything like that. I can't tell you how many times we've watched, Avonte Maddox, not be able to cover receivers, or struggle to cover bigger receivers due to his size and arm length. So
he's in perfect position so many times. Yeah. He literally just he can't get his arm in the middle, and it's like, I can't imagine how frustrating that must be, because he's in phase, he's everywhere, but like, he just can't quite make the play. So that's why when he was outside last year, it was always like, why don't we play him in the slot, or maybe Avonte should play safety, and he did at the beginning of his tenure. So these are the questions that come with these, not necessarily undersized, but like guys who have one drawback, maybe in a certain place, but not to say that McDuffie is not a good player at all. I'm not trying to say that. But should we move on to the next one, or you guys have anything else on McDuffie?
I think we about covered everything on Trent.
Yeah.
Where my questions come in is, the Eagles have been dipping around. They had a dinner with Kenny Pickett. Seemed to go check out some Matt Corral. They're making some noise in the quarterback market.
We're a quarterback factory. Can't forget.
Yeah, I was about to say it. We are supposed to be the quarterback factory. So, Howie said you want to draft a quarterback almost every year. So, does this mean anything to you? True or false? The Eagles will be interested in some of these quarterbacks.
That's false.
Yeah,
false. Unequivocally false.
I feel as if there was been no purpose to make that trade with New Orleans if you were going to dabble in the quarterback market this year.
I think that kind of confirmed it.
To me, this year is 100% about finding out what Jalen Hurts is truly as a starting quarterback in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they've spoken about it ad nauseum. Every time you ask Howie Roseman, he says we have a 23-year-old quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
I can't see them. And like Andrew DeCheco outlined in our pod last week, is there any quarterback in this draft class that you can say is without a doubt a better prospect or a better player than Jalen Hurts will be heading into year two as a full time starter? To
Mm-hmm.
me, I don't think there is.
No. Yeah.
Nah,
I would agree, Pierre. I think Andrew put it best. There, like, if you look at it from that perspective, you have a guy now. He's going to be coming into his second year. Do you have a guy second year in the system? But do you have a guy who's going to be able to step in right away, and he's going to be an absolute plus over Jalen? And I don't know if that's possible. And I think, like you said, once we traded that pick away, it kind of just made it seem like it's not as much in the stars anymore. Now you don't have as much flexibility in the first round anymore. You don't have like a pick to kind of throw around, and then moving it out to next year for a first round pick kind of shows that if the Jalen Hurts experiment doesn't work out, then they do have the draft capital next year to make a move if necessary.
right. And I think that's what it was all about for them, having the draft capital next year to be able to make the move. Because I mean, this isn't to say anything about anyone in this quarterback class. I mean, you guys will find out how I feel about the quarterback class really soon. I have all my draft content material dropping for you guys over the next few days. But as I said before, earlier in the offseason, one of these quarterbacks is going to be really good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know who it is, but somebody's going to be good because somebody's going to land in the right landing spot.
Mm-hmm.
It's just all about seeing how all of that goes about. I just don't think it's worth Philadelphia making that risk.
Yeah. It's not. Philadelphia's just not in the place to, make that move at this point in time. Like if you have things in place and your whole team has just is solid and you have your core. If you're in a position like Denver, right, and you're just that quarterback away. I don't think Carolina's in that position. Some people try to like pigeonhole them into that. Their defense is pretty phenomenal, but I think their offense has a lot of holes. But somewhere like Denver, if they had drafted a quarterback, maybe if they had drafted like a Kenny Pickett or something, he would have had he probably would have had a good rookie year, good couple years on his rookie contract because they had good talent around them and they would have money to surround him as well. But yeah, I just don't think the Eagles are there. Anything else on Pickett, or should we move on to the next question? Or any other?
I don't know. I think with Pickett, I definitely think he's the most pro-ready quarterback in this class. I'm not going to say that he has the highest ceiling, but I think if you put him in an offense, he can go and I don't know if I'd say he can go win you a game, but he can definitely he'll execute the offense and be competitive.
I mean, my question is, which is why like I'm real questionable on Pickett. I mean, I started out with okay, pro ready. Let's put him in. Let's execute. Then I started going through my process, understanding that you're going to have a 24-year-old quarterback. By the time he gets into his second contract, if you draft him in round one, he's going to be 29 following the 5th-year option. I mean, what exactly is his ceiling? And is he someone that is going to make your football team equivocally better? Is my thing. I don't necessarily see it. I mean, as we said, he's pro ready. He can come in and play now. So if you're looking for a bridge quarterback or somebody who just come in and hold you over, I mean, you got you a guy right there. Mm-hmm. But I don't think you want to spend your first round pick on a guy that's going to be a bridge quarterback.
Yeah, and I see a lot of like, I don't know if it's been as much anymore, but at the beginning there were a lot of like Joe Burrow comparisons, and it's not even close. Like Burrow was just a completely different prospect. It was just because they're older players and they burst onto the scene their senior year and all this kind of stuff. But Burrow had one of the greatest college seasons in history, and Burrow's pocket presence is also like his quote unquote superpower is what a lot of people say. And Pickett has been a starter for about his entire career, and he's taken a lot of hits. Pickett gets jittery in the pocket, like he doesn't have like the same calmness that Burrow brings. He's Joe Cool, you know, like he's out there, and it doesn't matter, you know, his blood pressure remains the same, and I don't know if you can say the same for Pickett, at least in the pocket. You know, sometimes he'll just be anxious to, you know, just get rid of the ball because he just doesn't want to get hit. You see that a little bit, and it can be worrisome. So that, like you said, it really does depend on where he goes, because if he goes to a place where he can just execute the offense and do his thing, and there's a good O-line, you know, he might be a decent player, but is it worth the first round pick for a guy you're going to have to pay when he's 29, right? And is he going to move the needle enough for you at that point? So,
like, to me, the perfect landing spot for Pickett in an ideal world is a team like Pittsburgh.
mhm.
But I think he'll go
That's
much
what I've been
higher than
saying.
that. Me personally, I think he
You
goes
know
higher
what?
than that.
So I will let you touch on how you think he goes higher than that a little, but that kind of gets us into the next question, which was kind of my whole thing. It was really a great segue, actually. True or false? Malik Willis' interest from Pittsburgh is just a smokescreen for something else.
I don't think so. I think they really like him. Me
Think
personally,
so?
I think they like him.
All
Yeah.
right, so hear me out. Long shot, but hear me out. The Pittsburgh Steelers don't need to meet with Kenny Pickett. They don't need to go see Kenny Pickett. They don't need to have any relations with him during this draft process, because the University of Pittsburgh and the Pittsburgh Steelers practice and play in the same facility.
Yeah.
Which means however much access they wanted to Kenny Pickett, they had it.
Mhm.
They basically know any and everything they want to know about him. So it would be kind of worthless to go out there and show interest in Kenny Pickett if you had all this time to see exactly what he was. So you kind of need to have an eye on somebody else. And who better to have an eye on than the most polarizing quarterback in the entire draft? So somebody's going to want him, and somebody's going to want them traits. I'm not saying that he didn't catch Mike Tomlin's eye. Mike Tomlin wasn't like, damn, that was good right there. But I also think that once the news started to come out, it was more so, well, we're not going to tell y'all we not. Because especially if we want to take a quarterback, why would we?
I could see it, man. You could be right. But in the same hand, I mean, you see a young Malik Willis, and you see, you know, a young Big Ben coming out of small schools, a lot of like just intangibles and just crazy arm talent, you know, and younger guys that you might want to bet on. It could be something that's up the Steelers' alley. You know, like the Steelers have been a franchise that has not changed much in their history. You know, like they still play the same ball that they've played forever. You know, so yeah. Maybe it's just history repeating itself, but you know, the points you make about them not having to utilize any resources to go see Pickett is completely true. But from the perspective of like a prospect that fits into, you know, what Pittsburgh has liked to do historically, Malik Willis's arm would open everything up again. You know, like if you get Pickett, you can play. Like it's not like Pickett doesn't have like a strong arm, but I mean, Malik Willis is a Horwitzer on his arm. Like he can air it out, you know? So, I think with Willis, you get the Big Ben of young, and with Pickett, you can get the Big Ben of older, where you're running a lot of RPOs and you're doing quick stuff and you're getting the ball out quick and depending on accuracy. So I guess it'll depend on, you know, which kind of ball they preferred while they had been, you know.
Yeah, and like you guys outlined, you know, Pittsburgh, like you said, they haven't been a franchise that has changed much. They've had what, 3-4 head coaches since like
3 coaches in ever.
That's
in
crazy.
history.
Yeah, like we don't, and then with them with the quarterback position, Big Ben has been there for so long, we don't really know like what are they looking for? What are they, you know, what are they like in the, what's their preference?
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting.
Definitely.
So I like this question the most. I wanted to get to it before we move on. But moving over to wide receivers, true or false? A healthy Drake London is more impressive than a healthy George Pickens.
That's hard.
It is hard. I like this question, Quell. This is a really good question, man. This one had me thinking. If you guys are still thinking, I have some thoughts if you want me to go ahead.
Go for it and touch, man.
Go ahead, bro.
I love receivers, man. Like this is my thing. Like Drake London has been getting a lot of hate. And so I've been thinking about this a lot about this take. I feel like everybody has kind of labeled London into this, jump ball guy. And Andrew touched on this last week a little bit. He runs way better routes than people give him credit for. I also feel like he's kind of been this jump ball guy because of his quarterback too. Now I don't want to be making excuses like we did for Rager for too long. We were like, oh, his quarterback. Like no one was catching more strays in 2020 than Jalen Rager's TCU quarterback, dude. They were like, oh, his quarterback sucked. Like it's going to be totally different. So I'm not saying it's necessarily the same thing, but it absolutely can have an impact. And when you watch Drake London's releases and his impact as a receiver, just when he's running out there, it's tangible, and he's a real well-rounded receiver who's very big and can get you those jump balls. George Pickens is just like that too, but with George Pickens, there's the reports right now. I don't know how much I believe them. It feels like it's I forget what the word is, but they're just kind of like trying to bring his stock down a little bit before the draft. But George Pickens is a dog.
Mm-hmm.
I hate him. He is a Georgia dog, absolutely, and he made my life a living hell when I was watching Florida Georgia games. But that dude can block his ass off, and he can run whatever route. And he's just fast and he's explosive. If he comes back from the AC, he's had like the injury history and stuff, absolutely. But if he can come back healthy after this ACL, George Pickens would be above Drake London for me, quite honestly. And I think he could even be one of the top receivers in the class. Like George Pickens is a different animal, man.
And me personally, I've said it a few times throughout this draft process, and I 100% believe it. If it wasn't for injury concerns, George Pickens would be top. I don't know if I'd call him wide receiver one.
He would be wide receiver one.
You think so?
Wide receiver one.
I'm right up there, bro.
Actually,
you go ahead and say
it because. Yeah, I'm gonna let you finish because that get real. Like when you talk about the injuries, that's when it get real.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can literally make the argument that without the injuries, a healthy George Pickens is literally he's wide receiver's version of Derek Stingley Jr. Like, what I showed you in 2019 was clearly best wide receiver in this class worthy, and I showed you a little stuff afterwards, but between little stat regression and injury over the next 2 seasons, it kind of gave people a lot of room for error. But what he showed you in his first year should have been enough for you to call him the best receiver in this class. Now, again, we all know how recency bias works and give everybody else a chance to come back. But then when you take all that into account, and then you go over to the other side and you talk Drake London, which makes it really interesting, you can literally say the same thing about Drake. Without injury, I think Drake probably could have been the best wide receiver in this class. Like, he was literally killing all of you guys, I ain't even going to say anybody else because we all know who we all look at wide receiver one as. But he was literally killing everyone's favorite wide receivers by a long mile before
You're talking about this year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But before the injury, like, just even when you think about it in general.
Yeah.
I'm going to pitch you a couple stats and you tell me what you're thinking about Drake London. Drake London caught 160 passes for 2,153 yards and 15 touchdowns in 22 games. Drake London, played in 7.5 games in 2021. He caught 88 passes for 1,084 yards and 7 touchdowns, including 5 games with 10+ receptions and 130+ yards.
That's wild, bro. That's a whole season.
That is a whole season.
That's a whole season, bro.
That's why it's so frustrating to me when I see Eagles fans. They're like, "Oh, Jay Jaw, he's Jay Jaw," and I'm
it's
like,
"Bro, not the same at
turn on the film."
God, it's like, dude, I get that they're Pac-12 receivers, but dude, like, please, like,
ain't nobody staying up to 10:30 to watch their games, bro. Ain't nobody staying up to 10:30 to watch Pac-12 games.
Well, that's why Howie got a steal, dude. None of the other, scouts and general managers, they don't watch Pac-12, but some of the Eagles do to really stay ahead and on top of stuff. Dude, it's really so frustrating. Yeah. So then, but let me ask you, Quell, to push back a little bit, right? we look at Georgia's offense, right? And they have other options, you know, and they weren't known for their offense, but they ran the rock, right? And they passed it when they needed to. What's the difference with USC? Did Pickens have, or sorry, did London have less talent around him? Is that why he was getting targeted more? Or, you know, did he really, you know, would he have gotten those same targets if he was at Georgia as well, I guess?
He would have got those same targets no matter where he was at because he's just that dominant of a player. Now, everything you said in the same breath is true. Like, based on my historical studies of USC's offense, I mean, they have they have an entire offense that they want to like. Keontae Ingram is no slouch. I think I got him as running back, 6? Like, he's really good.
I
In the
had
same
him.
breath
I
of
had him
that,
in my latest mock draft.
that is not a miss, brother. I tell you that. That is not a miss. Kid is a baller. But in the same breath of saying that, I mean, USC historically has prioritized getting a specific receiver the ball. Like, if you are the guy, you're going to get the rock. And you have to wait in line. Like, whether you went from Michael Pittman to last year to Amon-Ra St. Brown to this year to Drake London. Now, the difference between Drake London and those guys is not only does Drake London get the underneath stuff or the screens and the little manufactured touches that they got, but they've thrown the ball down the field to Drake London. Drake London has shown he could be a deep threat. He don't like. There's the whole thing about he doesn't create separation. He creates more than enough separation to get the ball thrown to him. Quarterback just not gonna throw it to him because he's there. Now, granted, you could because his catch radius is ridiculous. But in the same breath, he is a quality wide receiver. Now, if you put him on that Georgia team, which is my whole thing about 2019 and Pickens, which made everything so special, because as you said, Georgia run the rock. Georgia loved to run the rock. So watching all the stuff and how dominant Pickens was on a team that doesn't usually throw the ball, it was like, give me that guy. That guy needs to be on Sundays. He was that level player. It's just all about how the ACL test set him back at this point.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Pickens, I feel like, can I say he has the highest ceiling of any wide receiver?
If he
To
get
me,
healthy,
I've what's the kid out of Ohio State? Garrett Wilson. Yeah, I've said that he's had the highest ceiling, but now that I'm really thinking about it, Pickens, he really might be that guy. Like, I think he's really a quarterback's dream. Like, he's 6'3", 195 pounds. Like,
he runs
his ass off.
5'11", bro.
Yeah, bro.
It's crazy. His legs
clearly got that dog in him.
Yeah,
it's crazy, man. Yeah.
Like, and I gotta take the time to touch on this too, because I heard I'm talking about this on your timeline the other day, Pierre, about all the stuff that's coming out about him, as you said, like what you said, Parth. And I mean, as I mentioned to you too, I mean, yeah, there was the suspension for violation of team rules that same season, and he was known as a bit of a hothead coming into Athens. At the same breath of that, if that fight is anything what they talking about, the one that's video that's going on around Twitter right now, I mean, what do you expect from him? That's football. That's competition. That could have happened to any one of us. So if that's what you talk about in terms of character concerns, then bring me those character concerns.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, like I said, on the timeline, I feel like a lot of it is just immaturity. I mean, you're young, you know, young kids do stupid shit. Like, that's just what it is. Now, as you grow older and, you know, you mature more and get into life more, you'd expect them to, you know, mature and not conduct themselves in that way. But at the same time, like, you know, people grow.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I feel like a lot of times within the draft process, I feel like the human element of it all gets lost.
Far too often, especially, I mean, like you said, they're kids. And dude, I mean, like you're 18, 19. I mean, I did so much stupid stuff when I was 18 or 19, dude. Like, there would be tons of character concerns, but I'm not a bad person. I don't think so. You know, like I think I would help out. And you can't, you know, discount the fact that, you know, you put these guys in a locker room with guys like Brandon Graham, Jason Kelsey, with guys like Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts. That, you know, environment can change somebody so much, and it really just makes you want to bring out the best within yourself, because you want to compete with everybody, and everybody talks about how they're all competitors. that's all part of competition as well. So, I think the benefits of having a locker room such as what we have, you can manage to take a risk on some of those guys who might have quote unquote character concerns in that way. Obviously, there's real character concerns where you don't necessarily want to take that chance, but someone like this, I think that's absolutely the type of guy that you take the chance on. I think he's like the perfect candidate.
So before we get to some Eagle stuff, I do got one last wide receiver question for you guys. Something that's really been burning with me for the last couple of days, especially me getting into all my draft, my final touches on my draft stuff. But Jameson Williams, true or false? Jameson Williams will be one of the first 2 wide receivers off the board on draft day.
I think I'd go true because lately I've seen, he's getting a lot more first round buzz. Like I think I saw him mocked to the Falcons, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And, like I've told you guys before, I feel like all Alabama receivers, they come into the league, there are very little holes in their games. Their games translate very well to the next level. To me, there isn't much that Jameson Williams or John Mechie, for that fact, that they can't do.
I'm a big Mechie fan. I got one word for you, and that's my answer, Quell. Speed. Yeah.
That you can't negate that. And me and Pierre have had the JMO conversation off air, and he knows my feeling. And it's very hard. Like it's a 2-sided coin, man. On one side, you got a prospect who went to Alabama, almost national championship team. They definitely played in the game, like made a significant impact enough where if he was healthy, who knows how the game would have resulted. At the same time, I mean, you guys know who my first 2 wide receivers are on the board. And he wasn't able to, that was his whole reason for ending up in Alabama. He wasn't able to beat them out in the first place. And I would like to say the reason that Alabama receivers are so polished is because they spend 3-4 years in the program working with NFL caliber, working against NFL caliber talent, working with that coaching staff that Saban has put together. But I mean, I guess something that I just thought about in the process of saying all this is I would never take anything away from Brian Hartline. I feel like Brian Hartline does something to get everybody that walks into that Ohio State wide receiver room prepared for the next level. I think that's why I have my top 2 receivers the way I do. So I ain't gonna act like he is lacking any polish or anything, and the speed is necessarily what puts him over the top. Jameson Williams is just such a polarizing prospect in my end. He was always going to be one of my hardest evals because you were so good here in Alabama. Why couldn't you crack a starting line? Like, you got people talking about you as a potential wide receiver 1 over the 2 guys that you couldn't beat out. What happened?
Absolutely. I mean, you just never know. I mean, sometimes with teams, you're stuck behind a guy, and somebody's just like coach's favorite, and he's gonna get the reps. But you're right. It that's a great way to put it. It's like, can you justify taking the guy who transferred out of the place with the other 2 guys in the class who are at the top? So it definitely brings up a fascinating question of like who really is the wide receiver 1 out of Ohio State, in entirety, who will be the first. I think it's going to be like Wilson and Olave. I think they're going to go early just because of the athletic intangibles with the 2 of them. Or I'm sorry, not Wilson. I think Wilson and Williams. I think Olave will go a little bit later. But I just think like with Wilson and Williams, people are just going to drool at like the potential of what those guys can be, and especially speed wise.
See, me, I think Drake London is going to be one of the first 2 wide receivers taken in the first round.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean,
it's going to be either 1 or 2. At this point, it's trying to figure out who Atlanta wants and who the Jets want.
Yeah,
at 8 and 10.
But I mean, to me, Atlanta, they're a special case to me. Like, and I know we've talked about it before, but I could really see them going quarterback.
I just can't see it. The Atlanta has no reason. That roster is too bad for you to go quarterback. By the time you are ready to be a competent team, you're gonna have to pay your quarterback, and it just defeat the whole thing about having a quarterback on a rookie deal. I guess it depends on how good they draft this year and how much capital they got into next year. Not even just draft capital, but like salary cap and all of that nature. But they're gonna have to build a really decent roster over the next 365 days before they even think about taking a quarterback. In my opinion,
Yeah, but with that, the whole Marcus Mariota signing, what do you think? If you don't think they're going to take quarterback this year, what do you think that was about? Do you think
because
he's
they
just a
need
placeholder
somebody to
for
play.
a year?
Yeah, I mean, and he knows the offense with Arthur Smith,
Oh, yeah,
so it's definitely something familiar. I mean, he can get you a couple of wins or so. It's not like he's going to be any world beater, and I think that's exactly what they're looking for. They ain't want anybody that was going to be a world beater. I think they want to have their choice of what quarterback they want to take, and I don't think they want to have to play the trading game with everybody else with all these other teams that's loading up on 2 first-round picks and things of that nature. Not saying they're going to tank, but I I just think they needed somebody to field the position without making it look very obvious, for lack of a better term.
yeah, I get you. And before we get out of here, we have one more topic that we're gonna discuss. So the NFL draft is next Thursday. Philadelphia Eagles have 2 first-round picks. They have a second, 2 thirds. I think they have 1 4, 3 fifths, and a seventh. In you guys' eyes, what is the ideal Eagles draft? And that can be position wise in terms of the way you'd rank them, a player or two that you want them to come out of this draft with, anything.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Um, well, while you're thinking about that, I had a couple thoughts on the last question as well. Sorry, I was just I had to answer a call real quick. But in terms of Atlanta, I think they had to take Marcus. It's just another flyer. You know, if it works out, then maybe you get a couple years out of it, and you can push off taking a quarterback and you continue to build your roster. But I think they just needed somebody to take the place right now. They didn't. I mean, they did what they felt they had to in the Deshaun Watson situation, and then they sent Matt Ryan to a good place. Like, I mean, they handled that well at the end, but I just think that they need somebody in the quarterback room, and Marcus is a big name, and could bring in fans, and you never know what'll happen, right? He's a former number 2, yeah, he was a second overall pick, right? So you never know. Do you want to cover the Eagles answer first, Quell, or should I go?
Um, I think I could touch on it a little bit.
Go ahead, brother.
You see, it might sound so cliche, honestly, but all Howie Roseman has to do, honestly, is draft good football players. You don't have to always be the smartest man in the room. That is not what this draft is about. This draft is about seeing what exactly you have in your franchise quarterback and getting the defense turned around. Because clearly the league is trending towards a bunch of teams that can score a lot of points, and you have to be able to stop somebody at a point. And I mean, for a team that only had, I believe it was 26 or 29, one of the two sacks on the season, still ranked bottom third in the league, whatever it was. You got to get more pressure on the quarterback. You need somebody next to Slay that can cover. So, I mean, there are so many different ways to go about it that there's honestly no quote unquote perfect off season for the Eagles. At the same time, they need to go into the draft thinking a whole lot of value. Like, you have to basically trust your board.
Yeah.
If there's no reason to force any positions, the wide receiver class is deep enough where if wanted to take one later, you could. The edge class is deep enough where if you wanted to take one later, you could. If you want a defensive tackle, I mean, you could wait till round 2. I suggest you go there round 1, though. Like, everything based on the areas everything is positioning itself to fall in position for the Eagles. It's just all about finding good value. That's all they have to. That'll be my most satisfying thing about this. Just find a bunch of good value. You don't have to come away with a bunch of superheroes.
I'd agree fully, Quell. You don't want to just reach for a fit for a position, or quote unquote fit. That's what we did for Jalen. They were like, oh, Justin can't play in. He's only played in the slot. He can't play on the outside, and we make these things up as the draft goes on, and you start to overthink things. Don't overthink it. Follow your draft board, exactly what you said. In terms of like positions I want to address, I just plenty of depth at receiver, edge, all of that. But in the early rounds, like day 2, we need to address linebacker. Like it's getting to the point, and it needs to be a higher pick. Obviously, I would love it if
So I
we
must
could.
ask you,
Yeah,
what would you prefer, day 2? Of course, you say day 2. What was the second or third round? Would you prefer?
second. I mean, listen, we did the Davion Taylor thing. It depends, if there are there's a lot of good depth that you can get on day 3. So maybe I'm not as picky as one might be. Maybe we address safety in round 2 and then go linebacker in round 3. But I just think on day 2, those 2 positions need to be addressed. Now that I said safety, like we need to just figure out some solutions on the back end of our defense. What's up?
I low-key think safety's going day 1.
I wanted to. If we get what's his name from Georgia,
Lewisine, oh brother, you are on the board.
I am
go.
a big fan, bro.
Big fan.
And
I think
he's just scratching the beginning of his potential, bro. You see his story? Like he started playing football hella late, dude. He moved all over the place, and he's a late starter for football. So I just think he's just scratching the surface of his potential.
if they go safety in round 1, to me, I think it's going to be Daxton Hill.
I wouldn't knock that because that just goes into the same thing where I was saying about Trent McDuffie, where I feel like we're going to play a whole lot more dime this year, having the potential to move all your guys all over. And that's the thing about Daxton. Daxton can literally play anywhere. You want him to play cornerback, he can play cornerback. You want him to play safety, he can play safety. So he puts a whole lot of versatility on this team.
Yeah.
Definitely. What about you, Pierre? What would be yours? What would be your ideal?
So for me, I'll look at positions rather than names, or at least roles. I think coming out of round 1, you have to find another pass rusher, whether that's defensive tackle or edge rusher.
So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but this my whole thing about defensive tackle, because I told you a long time ago I had been held stead on the Eagles taking a defensive tackle in round 1, and I was pretty sure it was going to be Devontae Wyatt. But then all the whole news broke about the character concerns and potential domestic history. I'm not sure exactly much into it, but something came out about it, and I'm not quite sure how high or if he would even be on the Eagles board at this point. And I don't really expect Jordan Davis to be there, especially with the Chargers looming at 17. So the Eagles was going to take him, and it had to be at 15. Otherwise, he wouldn't be there. But how high? What are the chances of you thinking the Eagles actually addressing that position in round 1?
Defensive tackle? Well, it depends on who's there, like you just said. Jordan Davis, I think if he's there, while he doesn't really provide the pass rushing acumen, but if he's there, I think they sprint to the podium with his name on the card.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of talk about him not being able to. What did Greg Cosell say? I think he said he isn't a people mover or something like that. He isn't powerful. Yeah. But to me, when you're taking a player like him, it's all about the traits and what he could provide. The guy is 6'6", 340, 350 pounds. Like, he's a mammoth of a man. You're going to take that guy. He's going to take up space and allow your other pass rushers to get home. But, with the Devontae Wyatt situation, I think that could maybe push defensive tackle into the second round for them. I know they had Oklahoma defensive tackle Perion Winfrey in on a visit. So there's the potential for that. And at 18, I think they have to go receiver. Like we've outlined throughout this episode, the biggest thing for the Eagles this offseason is put enough pieces together to figure out what you have in Jalen Hurts. Getting another receiver opposite Devontae Smith, which wouldn't put a lot of onus on Quez Watkins to have to start. To me, that should be one of their crucial goals heading into this draft. I think they need to add another cornerback, and luckily for them, this cornerback draft class, to me, I think is pretty deep. You could get a guy like Alontae Taylor or Kobe Bryant, who are my two favorite mid-round corners in the third round. And they do have 2 third-round picks. So with the other one, maybe they go safety. A guy like Brian Cook, that's one of the guys I really like in this draft. So yeah,
I can definitely see that. Definitely see the potential of waiting to the middle rounds to addressing the cornerback group. Cornerback, another one of the groups that heavy potential and heavy depth later in the class. Well, that's my whole thing about this class in general. Like, everybody says it's not really top heavy, and it ain't. You're not gonna get many superstars out of this class, but
it's a
if
really
you play your
solid
cards right, if you play your cards right, you can find yourself a bunch of solid players.
Yep.
I don't remember what class it was. I think, what was that? 2003, the year that the Eagles drafted like Lito Shepard and Sheldon Brown and all of them in the same year. I think it could be something similar to something like that, where you can find yourself a bunch of solid football players in this class.
I'd agree. Tons of potential, man. But anyways, I think this has been a great intro episode to the Philly Blitz TV.
TPB TV.
TPB TV, baby. Let's go. I've had a great time with you guys, as always. Thank you guys for your time. Can't wait to do this again. And thank you to the listeners and viewers now for giving us your time and spending this time with us. Please feel free to reach out to us on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter. We'll try to put the links in the description so that you guys can get there. But as always, please subscribe, unsubscribe, subscribe again, comment, rate, review, all that good stuff. And we'll see you next time. Go Birds.
Go Birds.